Welcome to the Author's Edge radio show with Guy L. Freer. Each week on their show, they help authors create books that transform our lives and imaginations. Through radio excellence, they create a unique community resource, one that promotes, connects, and fosters a sense of well-being. They serve listeners by providing outlets for their creative skills and energies, and they help them flourish in the competitive marketplace. Their weekly show provides intros, writing spotlights, helps you in promoting your book, your writing, your publishing, your marketing tidbits, and much more. Okay, audience, here's the Author's Edge radio show with Guy L. Freer.
Welcome to Author's Edge radio show. I'm your host, Guy L. Freer, and each week on Author's Edge, we bring you thoughtful, lively conversations with writers, publishers, songwriters, illustrators, and artists as we explore the power and craft of storytelling. You can catch us live every Saturday at 8 a.m. and Sunday at 7 a.m. on KWRH FM 92.9 and KXOK FM 102.9, or stream online at kwrh.com, kxok.com, and on the free apps, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and TuneIn. Author's Edge also airs nationwide Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and on My Genre Radio Network. Missed an episode? You can find us anytime on SoundCloud, YouTube, or at authorsedge.org. Now that's authorsedge.org. And today I am delighted to welcome Bob Lovis. Bob is the author of 2 collections of poetry, Shocking the Dark and An Honest Hunger. His work has appeared in publications such as The New Republic, Modern Haiku, and the Journal of the American Medical Association. Before turning more fully to poetry, Bob spent more than 30 years as a journalist covering the healthcare industry, writing on everything from reform in medical education to infectious disease and the opioid crisis. He's also been deeply involved in the poetry community and serving as a president of the St. Louis Poetry Center and mentoring young writers through their annual high school poetry contest. And along the way, he's also a guitarist who enjoys British invasion rock and rhythm and blues, and even performs with his son. I should have made you bring your guitar. We could have done a little jamming here. Bob, it's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Gail, it's nice to be here.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's go back to the very beginning, to where you first spark of this, all of this took hold. Now, you had such a fascinating career, journalism, poetry, music. Where did the storytelling instinct first show up for you?
I started writing poetry in junior high, and mostly for the sake of trying to get a laugh, because I was a smart aleck, and I tried my hand at it. And then because I read quite a bit of poetry in high school in English class, I decided to write about more serious topics. And I had some friends who were writers, and I think that that helped me want to grow as a writer. One of my friends, the late Mark Leonard, he was a playwright. He produced plays. He produced plays all over the country, and we read each other's work, from early on.
Right. When you look back, what do you think of yourself as a writer first, or did that identity come on later?
I think I started to see myself as a writer in high school because I was active in the high school newspaper. I was the editor for a year and a half, and I was pretty good as a journalist in high school, and I thought that I would perhaps later on become a novelist. I was a big fan.
The Great American Novel?
The Great American Novel.
Did you ever get to that?
No. I didn't even write the Great Jackson novel or the Great Missourian novel. I was very enamored of F. Scott Fitzgerald when I was in high school, and I thought, I'm going to be like him. But I just don't think I have the chops for fiction.
Okay. You spent more than 30 years, though, in journalism. What originally drew you to that?
Well, like I said, became a pretty good prose writer in high school, working on the high school newspaper. And I decided after some years of floundering in the job market right after college, I was working for the state of Missouri as a caseworker and an investigator. I thought to myself, what long-term career do I want? And what talents do I have? And I went through this book called What Color Is Your Parachute?
Oh, I remember that book.
Yeah.
Very well. I did that too.
Yes, right. And I basically convinced myself, yeah, I can make a living as a writer. So I went back to school at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and got a degree in mass communications. And then I started to work at the Globe Democrat for 4 years. I worked at the St. Louis Business Journal for about 9 months. I freelanced for about 10 years, and then I joined a medical publication. And from that point on, I was pretty much in the medical reporting field.
So you did journalism in the medical field.
Yes, I wrote for clinical magazines as well as magazines that dealt with business issues. That was mostly what I did at first. I wrote about things like malpractice, litigation. I wrote about OSHA regulations, Medicare reform. I was covering that back in the 1990s when Bill Clinton was president.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you didn't write, did you write for newspapers or just magazines?
Magazines.
Magazines. Yeah. Okay. All righty.
So I became a magazine writer. I was writing for magazines in St. Louis as well when I was a freelancer. So I basically went from writing short articles to long magazine pieces.
So when magazines started to dissipate, what happened to your career? Did you retire? Are you already retired by then, or?
Well, when I retired, I was working for a publication that was online only.
Oh,
Medscape
okay.
Medical News. It's a publication for physicians operated by WebMD, and it was strictly online, so there was no problem with paper.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I gotcha. If someone had told your younger self you'll publish poetry collections one day, would you have believed them?
Yeah, I would have been real happy to hear that. Yes, because I did have aspirations to write poetry in college. Yes, I was writing then.
Yeah. You've moved between the measured pace of journalism and the more fluid, reflective space of poetry. I'd like to explore more of the rhythms that intersect between those two. Now, Shocking the Dark, that title alone is powerful. Where did that come from? That's with this one.
That came from basically a poem based on a painting by Paul Klee. He was a modern artist who died in 1940, and he wrote a poem called The Gold. He painted a painting called The Goldfish, which is on the cover of the book.
Aha, that's where that picture came from.
That's right. That's the goldfish. And the poem goes like this. The goldfish, the center burns with a fish of gold. Blue-green murk wets its flesh of gold. A body electric, Whitman's pet, shocks the dark with a flash of gold. Muted juniors swish to the edges, fleeing a light so flush with gold. If I touch it, will I shine too, like a sun of fish, refreshed by gold? So that's the main source for the title of the book.
And how does that work for you?
Paul Klee inspires me. He was a painter who defied the regime in Germany during the Hitler era. He was basically hounded out of the country. He kept working, even when he developed a serious disease that almost crippled him. He kept painting, and I like his paintings because they're so energetic and whimsical. Some of the other paintings he does, especially during the Nazi era, are darker and deal with dark themes, which was appropriate for the time.
Yes.
But I admire him for his courage in painting paintings that basically stood up to the Nazis.
Yeah.
Yes.
How does The Shocking the Dark differ from the earlier collection, An Honest Hunger? Which is this the other one? Is that?
No, that's not
that's
it. No.
Oh, okay.
I think that there might be more of a social conscience in
An Honest.
Shocking the Dark. There's a
Okay.
poem in the book titled The Temple of the Lost Cause, which is based on a painting of Robert E. Lee reading the Bible to a young man on his lap. And I explore the ironies of that painting in that poem, which is almost 100 lines long. So it takes some patience to get through it.
Do you see a clear evolution between these two books?
I think I'm a little more confident in terms of writing in form. I think I was able to maybe take a few more chances with forms. There's a Persian form in this book called the ghazal, and that, in fact, that's the form that I use for the goldfish. It's actually a Persian form that many English language poets are writing in.
Can you explain that to us a little bit, to our audience, what you mean by that?
Yes. Basically, each stanza consists of 2 lines, and you have an end word that repeats in the second line of each stanza. In this case, it's gold, 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 gold. But then you have another word that you rhyme. The first stanza, I talk about the blue-green murk wetting its flesh of gold. Second stanza shocks the dark with a flash of gold. Third stanza, fleeing a light so flush with gold. And then the last line, like a son of fish refreshed by gold. So you have to rhyme that word that comes before your final word.
Right.
And that's what makes it a ghazal. Yes.
Okay. Well, I wanted to make sure our audience understood what that.
ghazal is.
Yes. What a Persian poem is.
Okay.
It's spelled Ghazal, but it's pronounced ghazal.
Right.
That's probably a bad pronunciation, but
Okay. What themes seem to be returning to your work, whether you invite them or not?
well, that's in the best poetry. The themes do come uninvited,
Yes, they do.
as opposed to you wanting to write about them. I think mortality is one. Since I'm, 73. I'm cancer survivor, heart surgery survivor. So I write about mortality in different ways. I write about issues of faith. I go to an Episcopal church. I've been a Christian pretty much all my life. I like to think that my poetry does not preach or try to propagandize. I think it more and more comes from the heart and just describes my experience as a Christian, as opposed to trying to evangelize.
Yes. When you were in school and with family, how was your poetry received?
Well, I don't think they understood it or appreciated it, partly because my mom and dad, their education wasn't that extensive. My dad was a cab driver with an 8th grade education. My mother's education, which happened in Germany, from 27 to 45. She was born in 27. She left Germany in 47 to marry my dad, but
Mm-hmm.
her education was not that extensive, cut short by the war.
Right.
I don't think they appreciated it too much until I composed a poem to be read at my grandfather's funeral. And I think my dad was proud of that.
Yeah.
I think he was proud of that. And I think it may have been published in the local paper. And so, yeah, I think it was a point of pride for him that his son had a poem published.
Yeah.
Would have been your American grandfather or
My American grandfather,
American.
yes. Right.
Okay. What about your friends in school? Were they receptive to your poetry?
Yeah, like I said, I had a friend who was a playwright,
Right. You did mention that.
Mark Leonard. And when I was in college, I had friends that appreciated poetry. I had, we each wrote poetry and shared it. And there was quite a more of an emphasis on literature when I went to
Right.
Washington University. And I
Right.
had classes in poetry, and I met published poets like Don Finkel and Howard Nemeroff.
Now, have you taken any of your poems and turned them into songs by any chance?
No, I haven't. I have not.
You ever thought about doing that?
I've written a few songs for church, but nothing in way of rock and roll or anything like that.
Well, have you ever thought about doing that? I mean, because really, poetry is just songs without word. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I did write a blues song along the lines of, I think the title I had for it was the 12 Bar Blues. And the first two lines are, I woke up this morning, that's a good thing to do.
Well, yeah, it is.
So it's sort of a spoof on the typical blues song,
okay.
waking up this morning and getting out of bed and all that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is a good thing, waking up and getting out of bed. Okay, so do you write with a specific audience in mind, or do you just ignore that entirely and just write? Do you have an audience in mind?
I write for myself, but I'm also conscious of an audience because I have to think, all right, I have a certain body of knowledge and a certain amount of experience, and not everyone is going to be conversant in that. For instance, if I wrote about Paul Klee, for instance, I could maybe get too esoteric for my own good. Maybe I could use vocabulary items from the art world that would maybe not be understood immediately.
Mm-hmm.
It would force people to look things up. And I think looking words up is a good idea. I'd look up words when I read
Mm-hmm.
if I don't understand them, but too many unfamiliar words, then you lose your audience. So I have to think, yeah, I write for an educated audience because very few people read poetry, but I have to think too that I want to make it accessible. So I don't want to presume that people know this or that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're listening to Author's Edge with Gael Freer on KXOK 1029 FM and KWRH 92.9 FM. Today's guest is Bob Lowe, author of Shocking the Dark, Where Time, Memory, and the Human Story Meet. And so many of your poems are written in a traditional forms like sonnets and forms that the contemporary poets tend to avoid. What draws you to these structures?
I grew up reading that kind of poetry, for one thing. I enjoyed reading T.S. Eliot, who was not maybe the greatest formalist, but he did use rhyme. I grew up reading W.H. Auden, Robert Frost, Emily
Mhm.
Dickinson.
How about E.E. Cummings?
E.E. Cummings, yes, who wrote sonnets.
Right.
They didn't necessarily sound like sonnets, but they were sonnets.
Yeah.
One thing I learned about form is that when you try to write in a form, the solutions that you come up with to conform to the form makes your imagination go in directions that you wouldn't ordinarily go into. I think it triggers your imagination in ways that free verse does not do. I do write in free verse, but there are miracles that happen when you try to write in form with rhyme and meter, like the guzzle, for instance. Finding that consistent rhyme, flush and flesh and flash, refresh. So it's fun, and I think that's part of the power of some of the forms is that there's a pleasure in them. They have the repetition as well as the surprises when you maybe deviate from the form. So poetry should be a pleasurable experience, and I think that people associate rhyme and meter with pleasure because it's like song, and it invites surprises. So yeah, that's what attracts me to it.
Shock in the Dark also includes about 50 haikus.
Yes.
What first pulled you into writing a haiku?
I was writing haiku in my early 20s when I thought I knew what I was doing. And I was basically writing along the lines of the 5-7-5 syllable count,
right?
Which is preached in grade schools and high
yes,
schools.
they are.
That's right. Now, I was writing other kinds of poetry, so the haiku I was writing had images and such, and it resembled somewhat what the Japanese did, but I learned later on that true haiku does not conform to the Japanese count of sound units. See, the Japanese have sound units that do not correspond to English syllables.
Right.
And some of the sound units function as punctuation.
Right.
And so a Japanese haiku translated into English might amount to only 10 or 11 syllables. In fact, I saw one English language haiku where the word tundra appeared on an otherwise blank piece of paper. That was the haiku, tundra, and it occupied the whole page. And that really captured the tundra. But I was writing a story or doing an interview of a haiku writer back in 2022, Ben Ga, somebody that maybe you'd want to interview. He's quite accomplished as a haiku writer, and he showed me what haiku can do. I went to one of his readings, and people were just mesmerized and enjoyed it so much. And you could hear the audience laugh and gasp. And I thought, I'd like to do that too. And so I started reading haiku and started writing it. And that's what's led to the haiku in this book. And I've had haiku published in many haiku journals. Yes.
Okay. What's your process? Do poems arrive in a rush to you, or do you take your time with them? Do you like massage them, or do you just write a line and then sit back and write another line and then sit back? How do you approach it? What's your approach?
I keep a notebook and I just try to doodle. And sometimes the doodling will lead to what is actually an urge to go further. A tangent will actually become a line that goes to the center of something. Sometimes the poems come in a rush where I feel sort of inspired, and sometimes it's just jotting things down and then maybe going back a month, 2 months later and saying, hey, this is interesting. I should keep pushing this forward. So I think the most important thing is to write on a regular basis every day. And as other people probably have told you, you write to be inspired. You don't wait to be inspired before you write. Yes. Yeah. So that's worked for me. And I have massaged poems for weeks. Yes. Yes. I think about them in my head, like taking a shower. I'm thinking, maybe I should use this word instead of that word. Yeah.
We are going to go to a radio show break. author, and then we'll come back in a minute. Authors, artists, and creative entrepreneurs. Are you looking to get your book or project in front of a literary audience that's already listening? The Author's Edge radio show is now welcoming new advertisers across KXOK 1029 FM, KWRH 929 FM, and nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network. Our listeners are readers, they're writers, and they care about stories. Ready to reach them? Call 573-714-1352. When you're ready to take your book from idea to finished product, Blue Rooster Publishing works one-on-one with authors to create books that connect, inspire, and endure. Visit blueroosterorg.com or email Gaelle Freer at outlook.com. That's Gaelle, Gaelle, Freer, Freer, at outlook.com. Missouri Writers. Don't miss the Missouri Writers Guild Conference on September 12th. Connect, learn, and grow with fellow writers and check their website for full details. Learn more at MissouriWritersGuild.org. Bada boom, bada bang.
El Potro Restaurant and Market, located at 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland, offers the finest variety of Mexican and Central American groceries and goods. El Potro Restaurant serves authentic Mexican and Central American cuisine, including daily specials, not to mention the best horchata and tastiest margaritas in St. Louis. Open 7 days a week. El Potro, 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland.
Jewels on Hampton in St. Louis Hills is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches on site. Jewels on Hampton is a premier jeweler featuring Alvanza's jewel art designs with an exquisite selection of diamonds, semi-precious stone jewelry, and vintage watches. Their expert design team can restyle your jewelry to today's contemporary style. They also do jewelry and watch repair. Need extra cash? Jewels on Hampton is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches. Bring in your collectibles and clocks, sports memorabilia, and figurines too. Jewels on Hampton, 4506 Hampton, just 3 blocks south of Chippewa. Call them at 314-752-5000. 314-752-5000. Jewels on Hampton.
Hi, this is Gaelle Freer, and each week on Author's Edge, we bring you thoughtful, lively conversations with writers, publishers, songwriters, illustrators, and artists as we explore the power and craft of storytelling. You can catch us every Saturday at 8 a.m. and Sunday at 7 a.m. on KXOK 1029, and we'll see you around the inkwell. All right, and we are back. Let's talking to Bob Lowe about his book, The Shocking Dark, his book about poetry. So let's step out of the conversation for a moment and into the work, because sometimes a poem says it best. So the name of this poem is Good Timing. Do you want to read it, or would you like us to read it? Like me to read it?
I'd be honored to read it. I'm
Yes,
sure
I would like
you would probably do a better job
No,
than
I
me.
think you would
because
do. I think
you-
coming from the poet is best.
You've got the radio voice. and-
No, but yes, but you're the poet.
Okay. This is titled Good Timing. Better to be early than late. So early, I'm at the calm prelude, before the Big Bang woke up the cosmos, and various matters of history streaked out into the future. I want to arrive before minute and second hands begin sweeping us ahead into the pileup of the present. And if I can't see the curtain rise on creation, let me be there when my father in GI khakis glanced at my German mother for the first time as she stepped over Munich rubble and glanced back.
I could have never done it nearly as well as you did. I read it 3 times in the car with my husband, and I can tell you it didn't sound nearly as good as what you just
Well,
did.
thank you.
Okay. So that, I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. This poem moves from cosmic to deeply personal. What drew you to the connection?
Well, actually, the original version of this did not have the scene where my father meets my mother.
Oh.
It was pretty much philosophical to the end, where, I'm talking about a Big Bang Theory and history. But I think that my interest in origins is not just about the cosmos, but about my own life and my parents. So this was the origin story of my life, my father and mother meeting in World War II, or right after World War II. So,
the irony of that is that if certain historical events had not happened, would they have met?
yes, that's right.
And that has always been my thing with when I was teaching. I always told my students, if World War II happened, you would have never been punished by having Mrs. Freer for your English teacher. And they always thought that was actually hilarious. But the truth of the matter is, without certain historical events, certain people would never have met.
That's right. That's right.
And certain things would have never happened.
Yeah.
So, there is that Cosmo effect going on. There's a sense of arriving before things begin. What does being early mean to you?
Well, Stan Musial said that you should always be early, and if you're on time, you're late. So
I'm not going to make any comments to that.
Since I'm a personal offender. But I think that the idea of being early than late is just a commonplace thought.
Yes.
And then I went from there about being so early, before the Big Bang. Yes.
Yeah. And then you have the pileup of the present. It's such a striking phrase. How do you think that about time, the pile up?
Well, a lot of things have piled up in not such a pretty way in 2026, that's for sure.
Yes.
And I think the pile up makes you think of the what seems like a disorderly life, the chaos, the hectic quality of it, like a traffic jam. Yes.
You also have that final image, which is really, for me, it's really vivid, is that your father in khakis glance at your mom for the first time. Okay.
Yeah.
And your mom looking over the rubble and turning it. I mean, that is such a really vivid, and it's so simple. It's not like you spread it out or you've got a lot of adjectives in there. It's just very short, very simple, very to the point. And it's just how important is that memory? I mean, how that final image, how does that work? How did you get there?
Well, I wasn't there, obviously, when
No.
It was massaged, right?
So, but I used my imagination, and
Did your mom and dad ever tell you how they met?
I know that my dad met my mom when she was working in a telephone exchange right after the war, and maybe he was assigned to guard that or be on duty. And after they met, apparently, to get into the family's good graces, he would bring bread to her family. Times were pretty rough then, right after the war, and so. But I don't know a lot of the details, so this is all just in my imagination. I have the license to imagine this.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
but I think it's really it's almost a movie scene.
Mm-hmm.
I can picture it in my mind as a movie scene. I think that's probably what I really can. When readers encounter this poem, what do you hope stays with them?
Well, I guess the movement from the grand and the cosmic to the personal, highly personal, and maybe it would make other people think about their origins as well. Yeah. Um, Being succinct, being simple, that is a virtue. And haiku does encourage you to write that way. Yeah. So, but thank you for your comments about it.
Yeah, I really, that's, I guess because I also have a connection in that my mom, my dad was a GI. He met my mom in France, and I was born there. So, I have that same kind of connection that you have. The poem moves from the cosmic to the deeply human, and that balance really speaks to the craft beyond your work on the page. When you sit down to write, what usually sparks the first line?
Sometimes the first line comes from just a stray thought, a crazy thought. And I've led some poetry workshops, and I encourage people, if you have a thought that seems crazy or weird, maybe that's what you need to go with. Don't let things bubble up. So, and sometimes you just have to start writing the most boring stuff to get to the point where it gets interesting. So yeah, the first things you write might be very pedestrian and simple and obvious, and then you warm up and you start writing some stuff that's interesting. Yeah.
When, where, when, and how do you tend to write? Do you have a rhythm or routine that works for you?
I do. Now that I'm retired, I do have a freer schedule. and so I have an office that I rent, and it's in Clayton. I go there in the morning, and I try to write at least 1 hour just to get started on something. And if I'm working on a poem that seems to be clicking, I might be spending more time on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also will be going back and maybe revising other poems. Also, when I think about submitting a poem to a journal, I think about, okay, what do I have? And do I need to change anything? Because when you start to submit poems to journals, you look at them a little more critically, and you're not in love with them as much. You're looking at them with a colder eye, and you're thinking, man, I don't want to send a poem in with that word choice or that grammar. And so you make a change. Yes. So that's actually part of the writing process for me, is just deciding what I ought to submit and if it needs to be revised.
So you write every day?
I try to, yes.
And you, about an hour is all you write?
At least, yeah. Yeah.
How many times do you go over a poem? I mean, do you rewrite a poem, or does it depend on the poem? Or
Well, this poem that we just read, I mean, I probably spent several weeks to compose it and to come up with a new ending. I've rewritten poems completely, and where the first draft doesn't look anything like the second draft. So I'm willing to take a wrecking ball to stuff. And, yeah.
What does a good writing day look like to you?
Well, actually, when there's a poem at the end of it, that's for sure. I mean, I really feel good when I feel like I've finished something. And actually, haiku gives you that a quick gratification. It's sort of like popping, chocolate-covered coffee beans, where I might write 10 in the space of 30 or 40 minutes, and maybe one of them is satisfying to me, and that might be one I'm going to submit. So, for every one that gets published, there's probably 10 or 15 that are just in a drawer. Yeah.
So all right, so I know you have 2 books, okay? Do you mostly do journals or submit to journals and magazines and that kind of?
Yeah, that's the primary task for me, or my challenge. And then I'm hoping for a third book where I have enough journal publications for poems to basically, in a way, vet the book. That is, like half the poems, aside from the haiku, half the poems that are in Chalking in the Dark, they were published elsewhere. So that's says something to the publisher as well that these are proven products. Yes.
How do you handle days when nothing seems to go right?
There's always reading. I mean, that's part of the work of a poet too, is just refreshing yourself. I enjoy reading poetry, and you want people to rub off on you. So yeah, there's always reading.
How do you know when a poem's finished?
I think there's a sense of completion that you can't, maybe logically explain, but you feel like something is true at the end, and that's something that's bigger than what you intended to write about at the beginning. I guess if there's a surprise, if you feel like you've given the yourself a surprise in the poem, you've done the trick. It's like a magic trick. You've done the trick. You've surprised somebody, and I think that's a real important element. So Robert Frost said, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader.
Ah, I like that. Now, writing may start alone. I mean, as writers, you spend a lot of time alone, right? But it doesn't stay there, and you've helped a lot of writers along the way. So you served as president of the St. Louis Poetry Center. What did that experience mean to you?
I think it meant to me that I was in a community of writers, and we supported each other various ways. We had a contest, and people were recognized for their poems. I coordinated a high school poetry contest for 9 years. That was extremely gratifying because I enjoyed seeing the talent there and being able to reward the talent with having it judged by somebody. We would recruit judges, usually from out of town, well-known poets, to look at these high school poems. I think too, being in a community where you can get feedback on your work and affirmation, that's important.
For someone just starting out, how can they begin learning the craft of poetry?
Read poetry, that's for sure, because you can pick a lot of it up by osmosis. I guess that's how we learn to talk, right? Yeah. There are books on the craft. Mary Oliver wrote a book called Rules for the Dance. I think I have the title right. You can find similar books that explain the forms, for instance. I think, reading poetry and maybe boning up on some of the things that go into form would be a good start.
How does someone go about submitting poems to a literary journal?
You have to, first of all, find the journals, and you can find those easily with a Google search. You can look for journals that maybe resonate with you. Some journals will specify we're looking for funny poems, or we're looking for poems that deal with current events, or we want formal poetry. There are some journals that specialize in formal poetry. You have to go to the journal's website and read their requirements. Most every journal has a website. It's par for the course. And every journal has guidelines, how many poems you can submit. And they even get down to typeface and font, and no more than one poem on a page.
Right, and you've got to be very careful to make sure you follow the instructions, because otherwise they will not pay attention to your submissions.
Right. You can't write in crayon and submit that.
Right.
And some magazines say, look, you can submit to us and submit to other people as well. That's called simultaneous submission.
Submissions.
And then
And some people will say, no, only submit to me.
Right. So you got to
Yeah.
be careful about that.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. And so, and it's helpful to read the poems that might be online for that journal to get a feel for what they like. You can buy a copy of the journal maybe at a bookstore, or you can order it. Doesn't hurt to subscribe to journals.
Right.
Yeah.
What does the path look like from writing individual poems to publishing a full collection? How does one find like a publisher for that? Are you self-published or are you traditional?
I'm traditional. I think the best way maybe to find a publisher is find an author that you like and see where
They go.
where they've been published.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. You find out where they've been published, and you can think to yourself, well, if they liked that person's work, maybe they'll like mine.
Right. Are there a lot of traditional publishers out there for poets?
There are. The number is shrinking in terms of books. I think the number is shrinking because putting out hard copy journal is more expensive. More and more journals are going online only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. While poetry may not be about making money, does it ever become a source of income?
N-O.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you write it regardless. You hope to make some money to offset some of the costs.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you submit to a journal, well, you can count on usually paying a reader's fee, like $3 or $5.
Mm-hmm.
So that adds up. Sometimes a book publisher will want you to pay $25 for the privilege of being read. Yeah. So there are costs. And then you might hire a proofreader to go over your manuscript before you submit
absolutely.
it. So there's another expense.
How did you find your publisher?
The first publisher was Whipfenstock Books or Whipfenstock Publishing. And I knew some people who had been published there, and I tried them out. And then Kelsey Books was the publisher for the this book, Shocking the Dark. And I went to them because I knew of some other people that had been published there that I think are good poets. And I thought if they've published there, that would be a respectable venue.
Did you need to get an agent to get?
No. And agents are very rare in the poetry world. Yeah.
Okay.
Billy Collins might have an agent, but hardly anybody else does.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a new book coming out?
I'm hoping to have a book come out in the next couple of years. I have about almost half of the manuscript together. And I may go back to Kelsey Books. I may seek out a new publisher. I've thought about publishing just a volume of haiku. That's a possibility. Yeah. I would need around 100.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, you'd have to have a lot of haiku to
Yeah.
fill up a regular paperback book.
Do you think there's an audience for that?
There is. And people enjoy reading haiku, and also it's like popping. I would say I don't want to say like what's the word, uppers, but it's more like chocolate covered coffee beans.
Chocolate covered.
You get a little bit of joy out of each one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of chocolate. You just give me a handful of chocolate and I'm happy. Okay, so just that we think everything is done and figured out. You're also into music.
Yes, I started playing the guitar in 2017, right before I went into retirement, and I was able to devote more time to the guitar after retirement. What else am I going to do? My wife doesn't want me at home.
Does that sound familiar, my dear?
Well, there's times so you need to take the
Well,
trash out. and stuff
I
like
understand
that.
my wife's feelings about that. It's very common because you know she's used to being in the house by herself in the mornings. When I was at work, she had the house to herself, and husbands can be ghosts when they retire. They haunt the place. So
Actually, he felt more that way than I do
Yeah,
because
I've had to make the
yeah,
adjustment.
because when we first moved to Poplar Bluff, Missouri, he retired and I was still working. So he was at home all day and I was at work. So when I retired, he kept saying to me, "You have to find something to do." So that it was a bit of a reverse there. And,
fatal distraction.
Yeah. So yeah, that was fascinating. You describe yourself as a journeyman guitarist. What does music give you that writing doesn't?
Well, it's a very visceral experience. You're not thinking as much. For instance, you're using your hands, and I play rhythm guitar. So
Belong to a band?
I was in a band. I broke up, like many others.
Yeah.
I went through that common experience. But yeah, I have performed on stage maybe a dozen times, and
did you like it?
oh yeah, I really did. Especially when you see people dancing to your music. And I enjoyed the camaraderie of a band, and we rehearsed every week, and we're able to see our progress. And so, yeah, it was a fun experience. I hope to get back to it sometime.
Do you ever hear the rhythm guiding your poetry?
Well, yeah, the rhythm is there. I think it really stands out in the formal poetry, but I think there's even a rhythm in good timing. Yeah, rhythm is important. I think that's why I like playing rhythm guitar. I'm just playing these chords and, you know.
Are you self-taught?
No, I've been taking lessons, and that's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot from musicians, and they have a different mindset than the average person. They are very intuitive, and they are good inspiration. Yeah.
How is it like playing with your son?
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, my son is super talented. He's a drummer. He's learned to play the bass. He sings well. He composes songs. So, yeah, it's sort of a matter of family pride that we can play together. And he's very encouraging.
Is performing music different from sharing poetry? Or do they connect?
There's a connection in the sense that you feel like you're giving something to somebody. I think the best feeling you have as a poet is when you feel like you've given something to somebody, you've touched them. And with music, you feel like you're pleasing them, you're giving them something to dance to. It's exciting. And so there's gratification in that too.
Looking back, what's the best advice about writing poetry that you've received?
The best advice is read other poets. Read as much as you can. You don't want to read just American poets. You don't want to read just contemporary poets. You need to go back to ancient Rome. You need to look at poetry from around the world. And then you just need to stick to it. Take your talent as far as you can. Everybody has a different talent level, I think. And some people amaze me, and I just try to go as far as I can with my talent.
Now, you also coordinated high school poetry contests?
Yes.
Did you ever see your younger self and reflected in any of those students?
Oh, yeah. The precocious students who seem to be writing beyond their years, and who seem to be ambitious and imaginative. Yeah, in fact, I wrote an essay for my blog titled, "I Want to Be a High School Poet."
Oh.
Because there's the idea of beginner's mind. Have you heard of that? It's a Zen idea that if you approach something with a beginner's mind without preconceptions, that you actually can do a better job.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the verve and the spirit that the high school poets brought to what they did.
Yeah. How can we get a hold of your book?
It's on Amazon.com.
Okay. So just Shocking the Dark. That's
Shocking the Dark. And
Okay.
then An Honest Hunger is
An Hon-
also available at Amazon.
Okay. And Honest Hunger and Shocking the Dark. And if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, you said you have a blog.
I have a website, robertlovis.com, and my email address is there under contact information. And there's a sampling of poetry, and there's some reviews of the book, and some selected poems, and the blog. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Your poetry is wonderful, and I already have a favorite. So we'll, the one that we just read on what is it, On Time? No,
Good timing.
Good Timing. That was it. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today. Your poetry is a way of stretching time, moving from the vastness of the cosmos to the quiet, deeply human moments that stay with us. And it's been a real pleasure exploring that with you.
Gael, to be here. I'm honored.
Thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for being part of our literary community and for supporting the stories that challenge us, inspire us, and carry us somewhere new. Our next guest is going to be Kathy Muehlhauser, and she's going to talk to us about her newest book. It's going to be on the American Revolution, I believe. Thanks for listening to Author's Edge on KXOK 102.9 FM and KWRH 92.9 FM. You can catch us on air each weekend, stream at KXOK.com and KWRH.com, on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and TuneIn, and nationwide on the MyGenre Radio Network. Miss an episode? Find us anytime at authorsedge.org. Until next time, keep reading, keep writing, keep creating, and I'll see you around the inkwell. Bada boom, bada bang.